Thank you for that introduction, and thank you, Connecticut Mirror, for hosting a very important forum today about education in our state. I want to begin today by first dispelling a few myths about myself. For the students that are here, you know that when you meet new people, you often, well, where do you go to school? Do you play any sports? Things like that. When you're an adult and you go out and you meet new people, generally speaking, one of the questions you get asked is, oh, what do you do for a living? Well, for me, the conversation kind of goes like this. So I'm a high school teacher. Oh, high school, what do you teach? Physics. And that's a conversation stopper. So if the conversation does continue, usually I get a lot of demoralizing statements like, wow, I was never good at science, or wow, I really hated my high school physics teacher, or I never even took physics. So then the follow-up usually goes something like, oh, so you teach physics? Yes, I teach physics. Oh, so you only teach the good students. Now, I've never been able to figure out what people mean by good students. I bet that if you asked 10 different teachers what a good student was, you'd get 10 different answers. So I want to set the record straight from the beginning. Nobody, okay. Kristen Record, set the record straight. Okay, see now if we were in my classroom, all my students would have already given me the pity laugh for that. I teach physics to all students. In Stratford, we teach 4 levels of physics. We teach AP Physics, Honors Physics, Level 1 Physics, and Level 2 Physics. So what that means is that in the 13 years I've been teaching in Stratford, I have taught the valedictorian, I've taught the kid ranked 319 out of 326, and I have taught every kid in between. I have had students go on to Princeton and Yale, and I have had students who did not graduate. Which brings me to myth number 2. Yes, I am the Connecticut Teacher of the Year, but I am not perfect. My student test scores are not perfect. The year before I was named Connecticut Teacher of the Year, I had a class in which a third of the kids failed. The details and the specifics of that particular class story left several legislators this past spring quite surprised. It had a lot to do with things that I couldn't control, like absenteeism and which classes are necessary to graduate high school and which ones are not. And I assure you, physics is not required to graduate high school. And it was a challenging class, it was a challenging year, and it's certainly one that allows me to say with firsthand knowledge that anyone who tells you that a student's grade is an indication of the effectiveness of a teacher does not understand the complex realities of public education. I'm probably a good fit to be here today speaking at this Achievement Gap Forum because in spite of all these things that I've done as Connecticut Teacher of the Year, I live in the achievement gap. This achievement gap is my reality every single day. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about where I teach. First of all, I usually have a hard time convincing people that Stratford is in fact in Fairfield County. It is, I promise, I teach there. It's even on that map right there. So then when, Stratford, Fairfield County, so Stratford's a lot wealthier than I thought. Nope. Sorry, not true. For those of you who are familiar with DIRG or district reference groups, of all the towns that are here in Fairfield County, about 3/4 of them are in DIRG A or B. Those are the highest economic at reference groups. Shelton is like that little blip in the middle of your bimodal distribution. With D, Stratford's there in G, and then we are more similar to Danbury, Norwalk, and Stamford, and then I live in Bridgeport, which is a DIRG I group. So there's a lot of diversity in Stratford. We mirror the state quite a bit. We have about 1/3 of our students, this is actually a little bit higher now, this is data from 2010. 1/3 of our students qualify for free and reduced lunch. Just over 4%, now about 5% are not fluent in English. Our kids work, my kids work a lot when they are not in my classroom. We're roughly 53% white, 47% minority, and we're heading towards 50-50. And just under 10% of the students in my district come from homes where English is not the language spoken. So basically, Stratford is a microcosm of Connecticut. There are parts that you could mistake for Fairfield or Westport if you drove your car through there. And there are parts that blend right into, literally, the east end of Bridgeport. In one class, I am likely to teach both a student who comes from an affluent two-parent home where mom is a lawyer, dad is an accountant, and a student who lives in a two-bedroom apartment with a mom who works 2 minimum wage jobs and has a younger brother who needs to be looked after when mom goes to the second shift job. I have students who don't work but have nice cars and an iPhone 5. And I have students who give half of their 20-hour-a-week paycheck to their parents to help pay the bills, to pay the rent, to pay for electricity, to pay for food. Stratford is diverse in many ways, and teaching there is quite a challenge, but it's something that I love. I know that the work that I do there is very important because I know the profound effect that I have on kids' lives. I know how to make a difference, and certainly that's apparent some days more so than others, but I know it's a difference that matters. A lot of teachers in Stratford have done a lot of things to make a difference in the lives of students, and I'm really proud to say that we're doing some great things in our town. For 2 years in a row, our elementary schools in Stratford have been named winners of the Fairfield County Academic Gain Award. Those schools were Second Hill Lane in 2010 and Franklin School in 2011. The award, which is sponsored by the Lone Pine Foundation of Greenwich, seeks to acknowledge public elementary schools in Fairfield County, yep, see, we're in Fairfield County, that achieve the greatest academic gain in student achievement. They want to create incentive for other schools to work harder and to provide a platform to schools to share effective practices about closing the achievement gap. So these are some of the practices that have been implemented in Stratford. One deals with parent engagement. Through a partnership with the Connecticut Education Association, Stratford initiated 2 programs back in 2009. One is called Power Hour, power meaning parent organizer for writing, enrichment, and reading. Research has shown that busy parents have roughly an hour to spend at night with quality time with their kids during the school week. Power Hour helps teachers help parents to structure an hour of time that's specifically targeted for their students, their child's areas that need improvement. A second initiative was called Real Dads Forever. It was a series of workshops geared towards helping dads learn more about themselves so that they could help their students succeed in school. And as was already mentioned today, we know that parents play a crucial role in closing the achievement gap. And initiatives like this Power Hour and Real Dads help foster collaboration between our schools and the families in our communities. Another effective practice has been character education. Achievement gains in Stratford have been attributed to a school-wide citizenship program, Make Your Day. It's grounded in the belief that no one has the right to interfere with the learning or safety of others. And it has the expectation that everyone in the school community will do what is expected and do it to the best that they are able. Finally, administrators in Stratford have credited our success in closing the achievement gap to a teaching staff that has a belief system that all children can learn. Now, this last one's a bit tricky. A belief system that all children can learn. Such a system requires that teachers and administrators confront their biases about what children can and cannot do. Whether they are based in gender, race, economic status, or educational grouping, all teachers carry with them certain biases. These biases don't make us bad people, they make us human. But to be effective in the classroom, we need to know what these biases are so that this awareness can lead to strengthening our ability to meet the needs of our students. So through a collaboration between our district, CEA, and UConn, elementary school teachers in Stratford have worked with researcher Marlon James on identifying and challenging these biases as part of a 3-year research study. And as was referenced earlier today, there's an article in the Hartford Courant that apparently Marlin is going to be working with Windsor High School in the Windsor School District on a similar initiative beginning this year. From my point of view, however, it's important to note that adults aren't the only ones who carry around biases about learning and academic achievement. Every year, I give my students a get-to-know-you survey in class. I ask them all sorts of things about what they did for the summer, what was the last book that they read, what math class are they taking, what are their strengths, weaknesses, all these kind of things. But I ask them this question: what is something that others assume about you that is not true? And certainly every year I get that I'm shy when I'm not, that I'm not a morning person that I am, and a lot of superficial things. But year after year after year, these are the kind of statements that show up. These are the things that my students tell me every year. This year I'm teaching a 9th grade physical science class, and I've already had a couple kids in that class tell me that it doesn't matter what kind of grades they get in my science class because they already know they're not going to college. Really? You already know that? How? How could you possibly know that? Who told you that? What makes you think this? Those are the kinds of questions, and these are the kind of statements that I think about when I look at the names of the kids on my class lists, because this is their reality. And it's the reality that, therefore, I live in with them. Social and cultural sensitivity are crucial to closing the achievement gap because kids are simply not blank pages. They come to us with lives and stories that affect their learning and their perspectives. We as educators have to recognize and accept where they come from so that we can maintain equally high expectations for every student. This is especially true in the lower grades because that's where we first begin to select and sort kids. I'm really proud of the efforts my community has made in closing the achievement gap at the elementary level because it means that more students who come to me have a solid foundation now moving into secondary school and hopefully post-secondary school. But it can't stop there. At the high school level, one of the things that gets discussed a lot is the achievement gap in reference to enrollment in advanced placement and early college education classes, or UConn ECE courses, or IB courses. As a science teacher, I sometimes get frustrated when well-intentioned school improvement plans call for identifying targeted subgroups of 10th grade students for enrollment in pre-AP courses for their junior year. What I find frustrating is the lack of understanding that for advanced coursework in the STEM areas, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, 10th grade is too late. If we really want to narrow the achievement gap, the opportunity gap of who is enrolling in advanced placement, science, and calculus-based math courses, we have to start so much earlier than 10th grade. We have to go back to middle school because Algebra 1 is the gatekeeper. Completing Algebra 1 prior to high school sets a student on a path that allows them to take calculus as a senior in high school. Or a student who will only elect to take 3 years of math would be able to take pre-calculus. That same path allows students to have the necessary analytic skills to be successful in advanced coursework in science, like AP Physics. So how are we selecting and sorting the kids into Algebra 1 in middle school? What biases do we as teachers or administrators have when we recommend certain students for certain courses? And how are we educating our parents to advocate for their kids? How are we educating parents to know what their kids need in middle school so that they can be on the right track for later in high school and going on to college? Another achievement gap I face with my students in high school is the dreaded SAT. I see opportunity and awareness gaps all over the place with this one. I have had students who rank in the top 10 of their graduating class, not top 10%, top 10, who could not break a combined score of 1100 on the reading and math sections of the SAT. Why? Probably because English wasn't their first language. When you do work for a grade on a school assignment, differences in how long it takes you to read a complex text or how long it takes you to write a conceptually and grammatically correct response, that can be masked for schoolwork to get a grade for a report card, but not on a high-stake test when it's timed, and where your ability to do math depends as much on your analytic ability as it does on your English literacy. But what do you say to that girl that's crying in my classroom because Boston College will never accept her with those SAT scores? And what do you say to the admissions officer who's going to judge her based on those scores and the gap between those scores and her class rank and GPA? My district used to pay for all sophomores to take the PSAT. We also used to offer an SAT prep course that kids could take in the fall of their senior year. But reductions in school funding have eliminated those wonderful opportunities. Yes, SAT prep courses are available outside of school, but that costs money. And money, frankly, is something that most families in my community don't have. So now I see that I have a lot of students who take their first SAT in October of their senior year cold. No preparation, no guidance, no previous SAT test taking experience. It's no wonder that many of them score below the state average. And then they get their score back in October, and what do? They retake the test, obviously, in November or December, but still without having any intervention or any guidance or preparation in what they should be doing. So let me tell you about one of my students last year, and a little story about what does it mean to do your best. Well, I had a student who was in my level 2 conceptual physics course. He had only been in Stratford for 2 years. He had grown up in Bridgeport, moved to Stratford when his mother passed away, and really sort of struck me from the first week of school as being someone who was exceptionally motivated with academics and caring about school and wanting to go to college. And so end of October comes and he's like all depressed in class. Like one day we had a lab, he wouldn't even get up to go do the lab. So I kept him after him, like, what is going on? He's like, Miss, I got my SAT scores. They were horrible. So I was like, all right, well, why don't you come back after school or during a study hall? I want to look at them with you. You know, can you pull them up online? Sure, I can pull them up online. So he pulls them up online, and I said, wow, okay, yeah, he wasn't kidding. We're talking 330, 340 on writing, math. Wow, okay. I'm like, well, what does the score report say? What score report? So, well, you know, when you click on the little words that are underneath the score on the SAT, like, they give you a score report. They tell you about, like, the questions that you got right and the questions that you got wrong. Really? Uh-huh. So I click on it and I show him, like, we're looking at the math. He only skipped 10 math questions on the entire SAT because he tried his best. Well, why'd you skip those? I just ran out of time. I tried my best. Next time I'm going to do better to try my best because I'm going to answer all of them. And then the light dawns on me, okay, you don't understand that taking an SAT is different than taking a test in school. Your school teachers want you to answer every single question. You demonstrate to your teachers in the classroom by trying to answer every question. You do that on SAT, that's where you get a 330 or a 340 because you're answering questions you have no business answering. And so we went through and I showed and I clicked on the math score and I was like, look it, you know, like, wow, this is really interesting. He's like, Miss, what do you, like, how do you know all this stuff? And I was like, and my mind saying, I can't believe no one ever told you that there was a score report that went with your SATs. And so what did I find out? Not only did he not skip enough questions, every single geometry question that he answered, he got wrong. So what did I say? Like, are you taking the SATs again? Yeah, next week. I got to do better because I can't go to college with 300s. Like, I need, like, I'm thinking, yeah, you need at least like 500. Okay, what are we going to do? You have a week to do this. So I said, all right, you're going to learn 2 rules. Here are the 2 rules. Number 1, on every math section that you take, I don't care how many questions there are, you're only allowed to answer 10. And you are not allowed to answer any geometry questions. If you see a shape, you are not answering that question. Do you understand the rules? And he looks at me like I'm crazy. Like, literally, I'm telling him, skip half the questions, and if you see a shape, don't even touch it. And he goes, okay. I said, do you trust me? He's like, of course I trust you. You're teacher of the year. Okay, yeah, okay. Great, okay, so you're going to do what I told you to do? Yep. Okay, so this is 40 minutes out of my life. I told the kid 2 things. Don't answer more than 10 questions per section. Don't touch a geometry question. He did no preparation whatsoever. His math score went up 120 points. Now what do I know that I need to do? When the score reports come out in another 2 weeks from the SAT, I'm showing every single one of my students how to get their score report and what it means and what it can do, because it never occurred to me, and I'm the teacher of the year, but it never occurred to me that kids don't know that all this wealth of information is sitting there in their SAT score report. And if they had someone knowledgeable to spend 45 minutes with them analyzing what they individually did or did not do well on that test, it could mean the difference between being accepted to Southern or not being accepted to Southern. So, a colleague once said of me, students who have not encountered success in any other academic area somehow miraculously come away from her courses with a sense of excitement, belonging, acceptance from their peers, and stronger grades. That's a really profound statement to have a friend and colleague make about me, and I have been humbled ever since I read those words that he wrote in a letter of recommendation for me. But I promise you, I am not a miracle worker. I've already told you that I don't have a 100% success rate with my students, and I never will. But with that one kid, I know that I changed his life because I told him, don't touch the questions with shapes. I know that I don't have all the answers, and individually, not one of us does, but I know that I have the following things. I have a belief that people learn in part from their relationships with others, and that the relationship between a student and a teacher must go beyond the content of the lesson for that day. It's not just all about physics in my classroom. I have a strength of conviction that all of my kids, regardless of where they come from, desperately want to be successful at something, and that I have a role in helping them figure out what that is. I have a belief that tenacity and resiliency can and must be taught to all young people so that they have the tools to take on whatever challenges they may encounter in life. And finally, I have a hope that through collaboration, all stakeholders remain dedicated to improving public education so that all students can receive a quality education here in our state. Thank you for having me here to speak to you, and I'd be welcome to take some questions now or later.